Hey everybody. I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible, but this is a very, very difficult topic, so therefore it might be a little longer than I kind of hope. I'm illustrating a couple of things regarding Desteni Productions. I'd like to thank everybody that has seen my previous video, my first video, and I appreciate everybody's comments. Some comments were a little more scandalous than others. Some people were challenging what right I had to actually put those videos up. The right I have to put those videos up is the same right she has to put hers. Now, that's not being saucy. That's just illustrating that it's a public forum. So if she's going to put something up, she's opening herself up to being discussed. And that's what I do. I discuss. I'm not trying to say one practice of faith is better than another. I illustrate differences in beliefs, and I believe that humanity has these things succeed for a reason. So what I'm going to talk to you guys about quickly is this notion of self, and I'm illustrating this specifically with regards to Desteni Productions. The self is a very dangerous topic. Everybody thinks they have one, and you know, when you sit back and you think about it, you realize that you will agree with that when I say that this is my eraser shield. I've created a notion of self because this now is possessed by something, so therefore the notion of self exists in common parlance, in common understanding. So, but the notion of self beyond the flesh, this is when you start getting into ethereal archetypes, when you start getting into the metaphysics of everything. Now, what Desteni Productions does with the self is tries to say certain things and then use other notions of common understanding. For example, the belief that there is something beyond the flesh. Now, I'm not saying there is, I'm not saying there isn't. What I am illustrating specifically is with her. So if at any time somebody sits back and says, well, you said this, I'm trying to illustrate her point, and then I'm going to illustrate my point. What happens with the self for Desteni Productions is that this thing, this notion of the self, for her I believe is the energies, leaves the fleshly constraint. Now, when it leaves the fleshly constraint, there's two aspects. It's created a binary, if not trinary, aspect of this notion of self. The thing that is the self, which we hold as mannerisms, intelligence, knowledge, wisdom, charisma, all of these things are attributes to a self, if not the biological nuances of physical movement, such as my physical attribute to my charisma, wisdom, intelligence, all of that sort of stuff, is that I speak with my hands, especially on academic topics. The other things is the way that I walk, the way I talk, my accent, etc. These are all physical displays of this notion of self. Now, it's argued that these two are bridged, so therefore what is me, if I were to lose my memory, I have my physical self, but is it really me if I completely lose everything that helped build my decision-making processes, etc.? So these are things that people question. What we'd like to believe are certain consistencies and stuff. These are notions that religions have tried to talk about. What she does when these energies, when this fleshly self ceases to function, the energies go to this area of dimensions. There are these harmonic dimensions that are supernumerary to, and not supernumerary, but the superstructure and suprastructure of the world that we see, hear, feel, taste, touch, and smell. So when that energy rejoins with these dimensions, what happens, according to them, is that all of these attributes are lost. All of these connections to the flesh are lost. In other words, to the extreme of everything that was what we consider self is shed to be part of these dimensions. Now, that is the extreme. the faith, the practice of faith that Destiny is positing is that there are certain things that are retained. For example, name. But what I'm arguing is that there is a certain point that certain bits of identity need to be maintained if you're going to call anybody into your gateway, into your flesh. And not your as in everybody else. She's the only one that can do this on the entire planet. So just to give you guys that little bit of information. There are videos where she takes on certain personages and they explain what goes on, of which this person has gone to these infinite realms above. For Christians out there, it's above heaven. Heaven is an illusionary concept that constrains the world. Some people might actually start realizing that this is sounding very much like a certain series of fiction, specifically a trilogy movie called The Matrix. But that's not a value judgment, that's illustrating some of the comparisons, the connections. So what happens for the soul, or the spirit, or the energies of the person when they pass, when they go on into the dimensions, is that they become part of the dimensions. Now the dimensions is essentially the clockwork that puts everything, that plays everything, that puts everything together. There's an hierarchy of, if not an hierarchy, but at least a division between what's called the dimensional beings and the demons. Demons typically seem to hold what we would hold as negative value powers. In other words, there's a demon of hate, a demon of obesity, a demon of this, of lust, of greed, and all of those sort of grandiose things. But then there'd be, and I'm just hypothesizing, there would be other demons of like, demons of pornography, demons of other forms of negativity, what we hold as negative values. The dimensional beings are other ones that are like the architects, essentially, that build things that are, the dimensional being of happiness, the dimensional being of pleasure, the dimensional being of sex, non-lustful sex, because that's a demon. But of this, there's the self, this soul, this spirit, this energy goes into the dimensions, but doesn't become a dimensional being nor a demon. They are actually held predominantly as ambassadorial positions between the dimensions and the earth, or the fleshly realm. So these dimensional beings basically send these emissaries to go and talk to their loved ones and try to communicate and stuff through this particular person from Desteni Productions, as again the only gateway. But the issue that I'm trying to illustrate, so there's the majority of the backstory. The issue that I'm trying to illustrate is that if you leave this realm, if that self leaves this realm, assuming there is a self, leaves this realm and becomes, part of the dimensions and sheds off almost everything from the earthly realm. They are no longer greedy, lustful, if they were an alcoholic, they're no longer craving, these sort of things that are fleshly derivatives. Do they keep their ethereal attributes? And when I say ethereal attributes, I mean the things that you can't really touch. Do they keep their IQ? Do they keep their wisdom? Do they keep their accumulated knowledge? Do they keep their name? And if at any point in time they keep any of those, then the consequence of that is that there would be certain subtle things that are retained with that. You keep your intelligence, but the aspect of accent and mannerisms would follow suit, because your mannerisms come about as you learn. Your accent comes about as a medium from which you do learn. You learn your language, and from you learning your language, you learn your expectations in society. So you would keep certain things like this, or at least, if you keep any part, these are consequences of keeping those parts. So